And just so you know, okay, so this webinar is being recorded and we won't hear it amplified on this, but the people at home will be able to hear it better.
Okay.
So we will still need to use those, but it won't be like we have to talk into a microphone, but we will have to talk. It won't be like. So. Pardon?
The 26 participants, are those just steering committee members or people who are planning to listen as well? It's a webinar.
It is a webinar, so those are the attendees. And we do have Candy Cedavaca and Councilwoman Candy Cedavaca and Councilman Chris Herndon that we'll want to acknowledge. Yep, we're ready.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you wave your hand if you can hear me? Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure that you could hear me. Good evening. We are gathered for another Park Hill Golf Course Steering Committee meeting. Want to briefly just acknowledge and thank Councilwoman Candy Cedavaca and Councilman Chris Herndon for being in attendance this evening. Tonight we've got a pretty full agenda. We are going to have a welcome, which I'm doing now. We'll hear about the schedule. We'll have an update on the community information meeting. We will get some information on integrating the stormwater detention into the park. And then we will have a robust conversation around the public review draft, the community benefits agreement. There isn't a formal update this evening, but I do have some information that I'll share. An email went out to all the steering committee members today, but I will also give an update there. And then we have about 10 people registered for public comment. So we will jump right in. And so just as we know, we're in hybrid, so just a couple of different things. We need to make sure, steering committee members, if you're online, that you actually speak up, just because the community won't be able to see the comment section. This meeting is a public meeting, so it's open to the public virtually to observe via Zoom. We have steering committee members who are attending in person here at the Park Hill Golf Course, as well as some attending virtually via Zoom. Again, there's no chat feature tonight due to our hybrid format. Staff are attending virtually and in person. If there's a technology issue on site, staff participating virtually will be able to continue the meeting on Zoom. And as always, this meeting is being recorded and will be published on the CPD YouTube channel after the meeting, and the Spanish language version will also be posted. And so with that being said, we're gonna, again, jump right into our agenda. Want to say thank you to the steering committee members who, in the interest of time, submitted questions. We'll make sure that if we don't get to those, that all those will be answered, and follow up will happen with you. But more importantly, all that information will be given to those who need to see it. And with that,
We're gonna go to the next.
we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Courtney to talk about schedule.
And thank you, Dr. Ross. This is the same slide that we've been seeing for the past few months. And we are here. You'll see that the planning board public hearing for the area plan and the associated rezoning, that package, is scheduled to go to planning board on October 19th. And then if it continues to move forward, we're looking at city council, the regular legislative cadence in December. So I just want to let everyone know that where we are with the plan process, and we've had the draft plan, we have time to review the draft plan, and now we're moving into that legislative cadence. That's just a quick update as the schedule, and that's all I really have. If we want to move on to the community information meeting.
Yes.
Summary. And I just want to give a high level overview. City rules require the private applicant, the property owner, to hold their own community information meeting for any project proposal on a large site. The site is 155 acres and it meets the 5-acre requirement. The community information meeting is an opportunity for the public to hear directly from the property owner on how their proposal will meet the community's needs as identified through the 18 months of the visioning and plan process. And that meeting was held last week on Wednesday, September 7th. We want to maybe give Kenneth a few minutes to be able to give a summary of the community information meeting.
We held a community information meeting last Wednesday. Had a pretty full house. There were over 300 people here to hear our presentation, as well as from our community partners, which included Brothers Development, Volunteers of America, Habitat for Humanity, and Elevation Land Trust on the housing side, and kind of explain housing models, as well as the Butterfly Pavilion to talk about pollinator habitat.
Can he come a little closer to the microphone?
Is that better? Now? Yeah, I'll see if that works. As well as the 303 Artway Heritage Show talk about how that multimodal non-vehicular pathway would be integrated to the site in order to encourage not only transportation, but also kind of reference to the history and culture of Northeast Park Hill. I think that we had a lot of different comments. We'll be responding to all of those comments and questions that we'll be responding to over the next 2 weeks. The website that you can still go to see the recording of the presentation is yes.parksandhomes.com, and you can also
Can't hear you.
Is this on?
Maybe speak up. Sure.
This one, the lights.
Okay.
You guys hear me better?
Mom, give the thumbs up if you can.
Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear this? No?
Still sounds very far away. If he can come closer to your laptop, I think it will help. Because we hear you loud and clear, Courtney.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Test. Hear me?
We tested it when we came in and it was working.
Can you hear me now?
All right.
We hear you loud and clear, Courtney.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off the mic and just, unfortunately.
We hear you.
Yeah, and we can hear you now.
Good. Yeah, that's better now. Thank you.
Sorry that I'm hovering behind you, Courtney.
Well, I can just turn on the video and then here we go.
Are you muted now, or you guys can hear, or it's the Clubhouse laptop? So it's actually the audio is coming from over there.
Whatever it is, we can hear you better when you're standing there.
Okay, great. I will just speak from here then. Sorry, I'll start over. I'll just say that this is the speaking corner. We held a community information meeting last week. It was very well attended. We had over 300 participants. And we presented both our vision and then also introduced some community development partners on the affordable housing side. That included Brothers Redevelopment, Volunteers of America, Habitat for Humanity, and Elevation Community Land Trust. We also introduced the Butterfly Pavilion, who discussed pollinator habitats and how we can improve on the water thirsty Kentucky bluegrass that is currently out there with more drought tolerant and plant palettes and increasing biodiversity. We also had 303 Our Way Heritage Trail, who talked about how that project could realign through the site and would increase safety as well as access by going through a mixed use site and also achieving their outcome of having culturally relevant art and monumentation to kind of respect the history of this neighborhood. So we will be having, we received a lot of comments and questions. All of those questions will be answered in the next couple of weeks. And the presentation itself is recorded and is on our website at yesforparksandhomes.com. And you can access that there along with the presentation and any comments. Guys.
All right, did everybody hear that update? Was that better?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you, Sade. Any questions or comments for Ken before we send them across the room?
Thanks.
You mentioned that you're going to respond. How are you going to respond to those comments?
Yeah, so those are going to be in the a report that we'll have, and that'll be part of the LDR submittal. We also, I think, plan on having that on the website as well. All right. Any other questions? That's a good question.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks. Sorry for the audio.
And for those of you virtually, definitely, if at some point you can't hear, let us know. We're working on it.
Can't hear a word. If you can hear me, can't hear nothing.
Dr. Ross, you are muted.
Now I'm on.
There's some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now? Oh, never mind.
It's a mean echo.
You guys didn't know I DJ as well. That's good. That's that new sound.
As you can tell from all the wires and the setup, it's not for a lack of trying. No, like,
We can just use the clubhouse. We can just stand behind and talk with it.
yeah.
All right. Can you guys hear me online now?
I can.
Imam, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, thank you. So, again, apologies for the technical difficulties. The tech support is light tonight, and so you've got rookies trying to make sure that the sound is working. So please bear with us. We're going to move into having the integration of the stormwater detention into the parks. And
yep. So I'll just see. So we heard from the community that a large regional park was desired in terms of as well as open space drainage. What we have right now in the plan is at least 100 acres of parks and open space total. We believe that it's possible to integrate the detention area into the new regional park, and that's plan recommendations and the quality of life infrastructure section that starts around page 36 in the plan. Actually, a feasibility study for ways the integration could occur is actually underway now, so we're looking at that. And additional work will occur as part of a parks and master plan to build out the park once new park and open space land is given to the city. So we wanted to provide a little bit more information about integrating potentially that regional detention area and the regional park. Here are some examples of how you can integrate stormwater into parks. Right here, this is Utah Park in Aurora, Colorado. That's pretty well known for integrating stormwater functionality and a park-like setting. And then this is just kind of a rendering of something that potentially could be done. Owen is here too from Parks and Rec. I don't know if you want to add on a little bit to that. And sorry, make you come up and stand behind me.
Yes, please come to the talking corner.
Sure, I think we're excited. The most important thing, I think, Courtney's already covered that our colleagues at Dottie and Parks will be supporting that effort have a study underway to kind of think about what are the spectrum of ways you can integrate recreation functionality into the stormwater area or stormwater functionality into the park. I think there's a whole host of things that can be done, and whether that's a sort of a lighter intervention or a bigger re-engineering of that basin is what this study will help illustrate. So we have good examples in Denver too. This happens to be a recent one that is well known in the region, but there's quite a lot of nuance that goes into these types of facilities, and they can kind of look differently. But on the left, you have a good sense of something that might be easier to kind of bring that wildlife and natural experience into the detention basin today. You know, you have like boardwalk, you could have some paths around the perimeter, you could have some plantings, so we're not just looking at the monoculture, and maybe get some depth so we can retain water in a way that we can support wetland habitat. That would be kind of a light touch and pretty exciting, I think. All our regional parks should have passive and wildlife habitat spaces, and that sort of gives kind of a natural place to start looking and see how it can connect to the duck pond. So that's sort of one example, and there could be deeper landscape integration, which you see sort of on the right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to move on? Or?
Yep, yes. Before we move on, any thoughts or questions around that? Yes,
So, thank you for the renderings. When you come over here.
sure, yeah. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to repeat your questions, so you might as well come in and do it.
No worries. Mohammed Khan, one of the steering committee members. So one of the questions that I have, thank you for sharing these renderings here, is the one on the left is very much like, you know, you're looking at a marsh and there's a viewing area that's not using the entire space to the full capacity. And I know these are not set in stone, but, you know, I think the Utah Park is a better example. And I'm not an expert here, so you can tell me if it's a stupid idea. What if we have like a soccer field? Is there any legal requirements that we have, like people cannot be there physically, or, you know, because there's going to be a lot of water there, might as well just water the grass. Sorry.
I wouldn't say it's a legal requirement so much as an operational problem. So passive use, I think, is probably easier to integrate to your point, and in the way the basin is configured today. You know, there's nothing obviously stopping someone from wandering down there and doing whatever they're going to do in the basin. But we, as a department, would not, in the way that space is configured today, put active rec uses for a bunch of reasons. One, that basin gets inundated at a frequency that is like a 10-year storm. I think Morgan will help me out, but I think that basin fills on a 10-year storm, which is a frequent event. And in our climate, that will end up, if we have active uses, ending up in a facility that we can't maintain. Also, that basin today is not irrigated. We would not be able to maintain turf as it is today. But to your point is, if you were reevaluating that space, and if you can bring benches up so that you have some things in the area where they're inundated less frequently, that's something that could be open for conversation.
Just one quick clarifying. This is not set in stone the way it's set up, right? It can be integrated, it can be
that's the idea of that study, is trying to figure out what that spectrum is. What can technically be done? How expensive will this be? What kind of features that are recreation function can live with what kind of inundation? So there's, it's, some of it is a little bit subjective and some of it is operational. But there are, I mean, you can kind of imagine in your own mind, what kind of uses, what kind of things would be okay if they get periodically inundated, and what kind of things are tough to maintain. So, a path, concrete path, no big deal, right? If it gets flooded a couple times a year. If it's a turf landscape that we have tons of foot traffic on and tons of activity, problem.
Thank you, Owen. So we are going to move back into our conversation on the public review draft. As you all aware, everybody's had the opportunity now to review the draft and have one preliminary conversation and then a few more weeks to process. And so just wanted to open the conversation back up for reactions to the public draft discussion after you've had time to go through it in greater detail and just process on the information and questions and comments from our last time together. And we'll open up.
Just for a comment from one of the public attendees, they cannot see the screen for me.
They can't see the screen.
So, the association committee members online, can they see the screen?
It says it's sharing. Yeah.
We see public review, draft comments and discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you're supposed to see. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
It's still just, if I don't know what needs to happen, for us to hear better. If you guys have to stand near the laptop or just what, it's really hard. I'm sorry.
Yep, that's what we're doing. We have a designated talking corner now.
Okay.
And so we're going to take advantage of that. And again, we'll just keep giving us the feedback. We'll do the best we can.
Okay.
And we're continuing to try to
Troubleshoot with our.
troubleshoot where we are with the sound.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that being said, just want to come to our steering committees online first. Are there any new or additional thoughts or feedback regarding public draft comments?
Well, I'm going to continue to say that 100 acres of open space compared to 55 acres for development is not acceptable.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Sade. I have to agree with Imam. I think that's something that we've been echoing. And I just need to explain why that has not really been done. And then also I'm glad to hear that the 303 Artway is trying to preserve like the legacy, the history of Park Hill if this project gets developed. But I think we need to take it a step further, like interviewing those who have come from this and see what they also want to have reflected. And I'll pause for there and I might jump back in a little bit later.
Thank you. And that feedback has been received and passed along, Mom. So I know that we're still continuing the conversation and definitely honor you bringing that back to the forefront. Shanta?
I want to echo Sade's comments about the 303 Artway, but also as far as the 100-acre park space goes, I have to, also state that I believe that it is fitting, considering that there is still a conservation easement on this property. And so I think as much of it that can be preserved as open space should be. So I think that the 100 acres is more than fitting.
Thank you. Patty?
I really did like the questions that Muhammad sent via email. So I think if you guys can probably maybe answer some of them, that would be great.
Yeah, he had great questions.
I do like to know more about like if there's a possibility to do a pool, and the Dahlia question, like, is that gonna be a street for, transportation, like all of those? I think Mohammed had really good questions that I would like to just clarify.
Yes, Mohammed is teed up in the speaking corner. We're just going through our steering committees online first, and he'll be the first one up in the room. Thank you.
In addition, I don't know if this is public knowledge, if you guys can or not, but I know that there's probably gonna be a big advertising or a big campaign that the city is gonna have to pay for it. Do you guys can provide how much is the city gonna spend trying to promote this plan? I heard it was gonna be $110 million or something. I don't know if it's true, but I just think that a lot of the things that are not gonna be put in place, the discussion was because it was too expensive and the city couldn't do it. And I'm just wondering how much they're gonna spend on trying to push this plan to voters versus meeting some of the needs of the community.
Thank you for that question. 1 second.
Yeah, David Gasper, CPD. If I heard the question correctly, the question was, is the city spending money to promote the plan, the adoption of the plan, or any of that nature? Answer is no. That's not how we would typically go through a plan process. We just typically take it through planning board and the public hearing and then city council. We won't be promoting the plan, or even if it would get to the point where it would be a vote of people, we wouldn't be promoting one opinion or the other. I don't know if there's a cost to an actual election. I don't know that answer, and we could do research. I think it'd be paired with
Yeah, and I guess that was my question more, the election, because if it goes to vote, I kind of just want to know how much you guys are going to spend on trying to get people to vote versus trying to satisfy the community.
Yeah, we're not going to be promoting the plan in that nature, or spending money to promote it.
So I think maybe what the confusion is that we typically in all plan processes, we send out flyers asking folks to get engaged, kind of postcards, which we've, this was the, I believe, fourth, but all through the process consistently, we send out postcards and flyers and those materials to properties within about a mile of the Park Hill Golf Course property boundary. And that's consistent with other plan processes that we've done, just getting folks engaged in the process.
Yeah, that'd be about community engagement, never
Yeah,
promoting.
it's not promoting voting or that, it's just trying to get folks engaged and making sure that they're aware that there's a plan going on and that they should check it out.
Thank you. Other questions from anyone online? If not, we're going to shift in-house to Mohammed.
I got a question. This is Jermaine.
Jermaine, could you speak up, please?
How's that? Is that better?
No, we can't hear you.
Say it ain't so. All right. How about that?
Honestly, no.
I'll try another headset.
Try to hear and repeat your question.
I'll try back a little later. Hold on.
Okay, I'm trying to get the microphone to work.
Jermaine.
We don't have chat because we're.
Okay, we'll come back to Jermaine.
He's muted.
Yeah. Can you
Oh.
hear me now?
Oh, we got you.
Loud and clear?
Let's see here.
One second.
All right.
What about now? Can you speak?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Jermaine?
Yes. Yes. Testing.
Vaguely.
You could barely hear me? I hear you, man.
I feel like I'm trying to do the tech support and try to get the speakers better, and now I've made things worse. Okay, I'm trying, yeah.
I'm gonna try another headset. You guys go ahead. I'll come back later.
At this point, I think it's just Jermaine. Sade, will you unmute real quick and just say testing?
Testing. Testing.
Oh,
Hello, hello.
give us
I
one
can hear
second,
you.
there's
I
something
can hear you.
happening on our end, and we're gonna take a 1-minute break. Okay, Jermaine, will you unmute and try one more time for me, please?
Testing, testing.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. You can hear me? We're good?
He's still.
Please speak up, but we got you.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, that's perfect.
All right. I have a question as far as the stormwater area. Is that something that is going to be considered?
Yeah, there's Owen just mentioned the feasibility study that's being done to look at what the possibilities are. And just a couple slides ago, there was a rendering of an example of what it could be and a picture of Utah Park. And so to answer your question, yes, that's being looked at currently.
Okay. And on top of that, I also have a question as far as I like the vision. Okay, I do like the vision. I feel like there are some things that we have to take in consideration as well. My parents are aging, and I would like to see some type of housing or physical therapy type session for the older people to get out and understand what the vision is. There's a lot of people who wanted to come to the meeting just to voice their opinion on it, and as far as their vision and what they want to see. But at the same time, some of the things that I'm hearing from the older people is about how you guys are going to affect them, or how this space is going to affect them. That's all.
Thank you, Jermaine. All right. I just want to make sure, Patty, that you didn't have your hand up.
Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
perfect. Any other remaining comments from steering committees virtually? Okay, we're going to come in facility to the golf course, and Mohammed's got some questions he's going to start with.
Going to stand over there, or can you guys hear me?
Can you guys hear Mohammed?
Yes.
Yes.
So, and I'm not going to be able to send these in, but going back to what I heard from other steering committee members, so there are two separate questions.
He needs to speak up.
Okay, so I read through this draft report, and there was mention of a significantly sized park. So my question is, when, how, and why was a shift from significantly sized park to 100 acres? I feel like there's a number there, and in negotiations, there's a number, there's an anchor, and that's what people gravitate towards. So I'm going to ask, because I am pretty sure none of our steering committee members ever talked about a specific number for acreage there. So where is that number coming from, and what's the logic behind it?
So I think with the vision process, we talked about a significantly sized parks and open places, one of the prevailing vision, one of those elements of the prevailing vision. We moved into the planning process. We had the 3 different site plans, if you remember, and we went through that process, and it kind of ended up a conglomeration, taking the best parts of everything and listening to all the different voices of the room, because there were many different voices to come up with the site plan, hybrid of what we see today, in terms of things that we wanted to see, like those view corridors to the west. So we have those greenways, we have area along Colorado Boulevard, and all of that coming together, and knowing that we wanted a significant size parks and open space, and knowing that the detention area, that easement is 25 acres. That's clear, and that's been out there for a very long time. So with all of that, when you look at the site, knowing it's 155 acres in the site plan, folks are asking, well, how big was that? How big was that? Well, we know that this area, all the green stuff outside of the 25 acres, that would be an estimate around 70 to 80 acres. And so looking at that all together, undeveloped, stormwater detention, 25 acres, plus all the other green areas, that adds up to over 100 acres of parks and open spaces. That's where that number came from, because some in the community were asking for that, like what, they want a little bit more definition around that.
Okay, so just to make sure I get it right. So 70, 20 plus 25, 70 to 80 plus 25, 80 plus 20 equals 100, roughly speaking, rounding up some there. My concern is among the steering committee members, and this is a document we all have our names on, none of us ever talked about us, like, okay, first of all, I think it should be a range. I think 70 to 80 is a better way of saying it than saying 100 acres or a regionally sized park, a significant sized park is better. Because I was under the impression that the small area plan will not have specifics like a 100-acre park or 55 acres of development for that matter. So that's where my confusion is coming from.
And I think that, we're working hard to find a balance in between understanding that some people want a little bit more specifics and definition, and they wanted numbers. So we can still say, significantly sized parks and open space. With a range, I think that's how we kind of threaded that needle. Because it's all of it all together.
Okay, I understand you're trying to, balance a lot of priorities, but I'm just saying that we didn't discuss it. You didn't tell me if you wanted 155 acres. Moving on.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Showalter from Community Planning and Development with the city. Did just want to clarify, we did, and I don't know, we probably don't have them ready to bring up, but you might remember a big part of the work we did together a few months ago was going through, Courtney referenced them, 3 different site plan alternatives that did have numbers on them. And we have talked with this group. Again, you're right. It's not like we had a poll or something like who wants 75, who wants 80. It wasn't ever that specific. You're definitely right about that. But we did really try to get into like the different characteristics of different sizes and the trade-offs that come with that, right? Because the more open space you have, then the less room you have for the affordable housing and other goals that this group and the community has identified. And we have heard, like the imams, I think in almost every meeting we've had recently has been very strong on like, I think the park should be bigger. I think it should be 100 acres. And other people have said, or I'm sorry, I think it should be smaller. I think it should be smaller and have more room for development. Sorry, I'm completely flipped that. And other people have said, no, I think it should be bigger. So we have had, I feel like we have had pretty good discussion. I think the challenge is that there's not an easy answer on anything on this property, right? Where everyone agrees like, yes, 100%, that's the right size for the park. And so we're trying our best to kind of take all that input, like Courtney said, and put it into a range. I think you're totally right. A range is more appropriate for a plan. And I also wanted to clarify what you said. Because we heard desire for more numbers, we're putting that into the draft plan for transparency. But it is a plan, right? It doesn't, it's not like law or something. It's like the park will definitely be this size. So there is still some flexibility, and it'll actually be the development agreement that we've talked about before with this group. It's kind of like a package of things moving forward here. The development agreement will be between the landowner and the city, and that's where we really get into and that's more of a negotiation between the city and the landowner, that ultimately city council would have to say like, yes, we approve that or not. And but you are right that the plan is a little higher level, not really the place where we want to get into. It'll be exactly this size. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
again, sorry, for completely flipping what you said.
You almost had your mom putting his shoes on driving down here. Before you have another question, do we have any questions from any of the steering committee members? I have a question. Yeah, come on down. Your question is right.
Yeah, Roger Cobb, community member. Seems like in the last couple of plans, there's still some talk about opening up Dahlia from I-70. And from the folks that I've talked to and I'm hearing from, and anyone that lives on Dahlia and the Overlook, That's just not a good idea. I don't know if that's in stone or not, if it has to be. And we've heard several reasons why it has to happen. I don't know if that's in stone or not, so I'm hoping someone can answer that question, because I'm thinking if anyone sitting around this table lived on Dahlia or actually Dahlia from I-70 to MLK, I don't think you'd want to have that road open, because it's going to bring so much more traffic to the community. So if someone could answer that for me, I'd really appreciate it.
Trying to get this. So you can see that recommendation.
Thanks, Roger, for the question. I think we've wanted to have a better discussion on Dahlia for a while. This is David Gaspers of CPD, and I think this discussion of connectivity and mobility kind of goes back to maybe our first workshop in March, where we had various different iterations of the site, and it had the east-west connection on it as well. If you remember, the 38th going through. I think we got feedback on both the Dahlia connection and 38th that neither were, strongly supported at that time. But I think the West 38th was far more vehemently opposed. There was more opposition to the east-west connection cutting through the park. It was just louder, I guess. It was more significant to bifurcate that park into a north and south with a east-west connection. So after that workshop, city staff had conversations about what to do about that. Obviously, our friends in Dottie are always interested in improving the network and improving the connectivity of the grid. So it's not just our major arterials taking on some of the traffic, but ultimately we agreed that the idea of splitting that park into two was not something the community wanted to have. So there was an agreement that West 38th would not cut through east to west. So I think the attention then turned to the Dahlia connection. And it's really not about the potential 55 acres on the west with the development from west side there. The Dahlia connection, I think, is more about ultimately the regional park and the access to the regional park in the future. We want to have good access to that regional park for all modes. Obviously, we want to emphasize pedestrians and bicyclists, but as a regional park, we know people will come from further distances, especially for athletic fields and other destination type things. And so thinking through that, we don't really would want to see folks from the east or northeast having to come all the way around and enter the park site only from the west or from the south. We know that the detention pond is hopefully going to be reimagined on how that actually functions, but we know that's probably still going to have some component that's going to retain the water to the north, right? So that having that access to the east becomes more important. And so the question is, how do you achieve that? I think a Dahlia connection that's done with an appropriate cross section that really assists accessing the park from both the north and the south, potentially having parking on that street as well as into the park could be a real community benefit for say youth sports, right? And I could imagine a football coach coming from the east, and we don't want them to drive all the way around Colorado through this development and then hauling their bags of football helmets and bags, right? And trying to, yeah, you'd want them to come from the east and potentially be able to do that there. So I think there's a lot more thought that needs to be put into how that street is designed for everyone, including the park users. And I don't think that would occur until we have a master park plan process and really think through the programmatic aspects of the park before we really understand how Dahlia would serve that park. But I think,
Right.
Well, I'm not going to tell you anything about what it's not or what it is. I think it is important that it's a multimodal connection that allows access to the park.
And we have Walter from Dottie that's able to.
Yeah, it'd be great if Walter could add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney and David. And David just this is Walter Scheib from Dottie. And I think David did a really good job summarizing where we're at in terms of examining Dahlia and the connection at this point. As he mentioned, the goal is to serve both as an access point to the park while also providing a multimodal through connection for all roadway users. So there will be a connection that vehicles could use, but they would not necessarily be the top priority. There would be space prioritized via separated sidewalks and trails for those who are walking and biking throughout the corridor. And then if there are concerns with increased volume of through traffic and that sort of thing, there's other options that can be examined in terms of ways to limit through traffic, whether it's diverters, or if you have various safety measures in place which reduce speeds and sort of create a little bit more friction for those who are trying to drive through the area. It's not as palatable to necessarily use that as a cut through. So just wanted to add to David's points there.
It'd be nice to see some of those other options are really would be.
Oh, and just so everyone knows who Walter is with our Department of Transportation Infrastructure, and he is on the Park Hill Golf Course Project Management Team, kind of as the mobility lead. So that's just so everyone knows who Walter is on the screen and why he's talking about this. I'm so used to seeing Walter, I was like, oh, well, we'll just have Walter talk.
So
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you, Walter, and thank you for the question, Roger. We're going to go to Patty and then Chanel, and then we'll be back inside here at the facility. Patty?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to clarify. So it seems to me that this agreement was internal in the city decided that that's what it was supposed to be. And I guess it's very unclear of what it's going to be like. And maybe you guys don't want to, put it on paper, but I think it's important to note, since we're in the committee, that the community knows that this is not something we agree in as a committee. And this is something that the city's doing because that's what they think is best. Just because I do know that there's a lot of people that are not gonna like this. And I just wanna make sure that they know that we tried and that it was not our decision.
Thank you, Patty. Chanel?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I kind of want to circumvent a little bit also. I know we were supposed to discuss some things about the community benefits agreement tonight. And is this our last meeting? And when will we hear anything from them?
So there is an email that you have today. I'll review the information that I have to date. As you know, the CBA is not an official part of the city or this process, but you do have the contact for Mary. And so you can reach out to her at any time to get an update. But as we transition from this conversation, I'll share the information that I have to date.
This is our last meeting though, correct?
Ish, yes. This is the last meeting before the plan goes to planning board, yes.
Okay. That was the point I wanted to make, that we just didn't. I mean, I'm over the meetings, to be honest, but yeah, I just thought it would be full circle. So without us having to do the back and forth with individuals on our own efforts.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just again, so everybody knows, the CDA is a separate function and not a function of the city or a function of this process. And so by nature of that, it's, we can request information, which we have, but, there's nobody that from the city who can hold somebody specifically accountable to that. But as doing the best we can to make sure that we have updated information from them as they have it, as they'll share. Shanta?
How much weight will the CBA carry in this process? Considering that we are the steering committee, I would think that our efforts would really be intertwined. So I'm not sure, again, the lack of transparency is very, very troubling. And I'm just wondering how much weight will their decisions carry in relation to, in correlation to ours.
So I will probably defer to someone from the city to answer, but my understanding to this point is is the CBA won't have any, they're not a part of this information gathering process. They're not a part of the process where this information is going to planning board. They are going to be in conversation specifically with the developer to talk about and hold the developer accountable for whatever the developer says that they're going to do, and that they are going to ask the developer for specific things. And so it might be two separate conversations, but I'm going to stop there. And
Right,
I
that's
guess
it.
my concern is could their conversations go contrary to what we have discussed here and the plan that will come out of this process?
How
yeah,
so?
well, I think that what's important to recognize, well, one, I don't know, we don't know exactly what they're talking about.
Exactly.
But the things that come through here have to go through city council, and the CBA doesn't have authority over city council, who will ultimately push this process forward. So I think it's two separate things, but we do have the contact person for the CBA. And we'll make sure we give that information to you again. And as we get information, we'll continue to share it. That's unfortunately the best I have as it relates to the CBA, because they're not an official part of the process that you all are participating in.
Right, and there's no sort of weighting per se, like it's a private agreement between, like Councilwoman Kinich said last meeting, it's a private agreement between two parties, the like-minded community group, and they're negotiating with the private property owner. The city's not a party to those discussions, but they're negotiating for things like equity related, like jobs, things of hiring, things like that. And we'll go into a little bit more on the community benefits agreement slide, just so when you talk about the things that Mary emailed everyone. But really that's, not part of this process.
But we will definitely keep everybody posted with the information that we get. And then also you have the ability to reach out to Mary, who's the representative of the CBA at this point, to ask questions along the way. Come back internal to Muhammad. Spaces there.
That's fine. I'm gonna stand here so people can hear me better. And again, this is Mohammed Khan, steering committee member. And this is another one of those points where, I'm saying that as steering committee members, we have our names that are going on this process. So everything that is in the process, it appears that we have all agreed on this. And I can name several steering committee members who I had conversations with, and we did not agree that Dahlia should be through street. I have the draft plan pulled up here. So on page 34 of draft plan under mobility, in the map that you have, it says Dahlia and technically Albion would be mixed use collector streets. And if I go down to page 37 under policy M1, I can zoom in. Sorry. All this work. It says under recommendation point H, create a new multimodal street on Dahlia that is safe. And there's another conversation here. It said, where did it go? Sorry. It said basically that needs to be walkable and bikeable. Sorry, wrong. This one here. So new under recommendation C, sorry, page 38, recommendation C, create a new bike and pedestrian connection across Regional Park linking 38th Avenue to Dahlia 38. So what I really want to see here is this language change that there will be no motorized vehicles allowed on Albion Street. And this is here, and we haven't heard from Denver Moves. Everybody here that is in the park.
On Albion?
On Albion.
Albion, so this right here, like it would be this north-south right here. This is Albion, this going right here.
It's going through the park, right?
No, this it wouldn't be out. So north-south is Albion.
This Green Street.
Right here. That's not through the park. That's right here. That's through the development right here.
We're talking about this one here. This is 303 Artway.
Okay.
That's the Artway.
So in this
Albion-
doc, this one and this one.
So this right here is that's basically going right here through here. It's an Ash Street connection. This is
Oh.
Ash Street.
Sorry, my bad. It says
Can you show us on your
Albion
screen,
Trinity Ash
Courtney?
because of the alignment.
Can you
Okay.
show us on your screen, Courtney, what he's talking about?
So there was a little bit of confusion right here. It's Albion and then Ash, and I know Walt, are you on too?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So Ash, what it is, it's gonna have this alignment right through this street. And that's what you were talking about.
Yes, sorry, my bad.
Okay.
So not Albion, Albion will become Ash here because
It
we're
goes,
to the.
yeah, it kind of jogs right there. You see,
Yes.
at the top, sorry. If you look on page
35.
35 of the plan, as it relates to this illustrative right here, there's a jog and Ash will come up and connect right here with Albion Street. And so there was confusion. That doesn't go through the park. That's going through, that's accessing development.
Yes,
Okay.
and on the page 30, sorry, page 35, this is page 35.
Mhm.
Page 35, it says bike in the legend there. And if you go down to this is the one that you're sharing. And the one before, on page 34, it says it's a mixed use collector street, so both Ash and Dahlia would be. What really needs to happen in this plan, I know we're not talking specifics, but it should say there will be no motorized traffic on either of those streets that are going through the park. And there are a couple of reasons for that. I'm gonna make it very quick. So first of all, the reason some of us are agreeing for a higher density traffic near the 40th and Colorado corner is because higher density population, higher density units, higher density living, so people don't have to drive. I get it, people are driving cars right now. What is the Denver's plan for 50 years? If you go to this plan here, under the mobility recommendation on page 38, M3, I'm not going to read the policy, but the idea is to stop getting people to use driving single occupancy cars and take more of the rapid transport system that's going to develop on Colorado Boulevard, the light rail station. It's like we are incentivizing people to drive on Dahlia and provide them parking so they can park there. Where is the study that Denver Parks did for the parks when they closed the parks, Cheeseman Park, Wash Park, people cannot drive inside the park, that made parks more safer.
That's not realistic for everybody, though.
I understand that. That's why people can drive on Colorado and they can access it from that way, but we don't have to provide driving access from both sides of the street.
Thank you.
There are some people who still need to drive into the park. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's a good example of kind of how the nuance of this work is being looked at, trying to take into all those considerations. Come on.
So I don't think there's no streets per se going through the main section of this park area.
Right.
Right.
But there are street types, if you look at the street type map, like there are bicycle facilities, for instance, on, I guess that aligns with 38th. There'll be, where it comes through the community main street, there's bicycle facilities that are on street in that location. So you have to look at those maps together and understand that these are streets, some of them are streets that come through that have bicycle facilities on them, but that doesn't like preclude one mode or the other. And I think that maybe we can talk offline, and there's some confusion with the street types map and the bicycle, and we'll have Walter involved with the conversation too. But the illustrative map and the street types map are two different things.
Yeah, and I think just maybe, again, this is probably more of an offline conversation, but just in the mobility maps on page 34 and 35, just making clear that the Albion Ash would be cutting through the development and not through the park itself, and just
Right.
having an overlay there showing that.
And Dahlia.
Dahlia doesn't cut through the park. It's on the edge of it. Yeah.
All right, good. Come on up.
I feel like I'm taking my license. White thing. Good evening, Noah Stout, community member and part of the steering committee. Comment and then a question. I think it'd be really, really important. I believe this process The steering committee process has gone on for more than a year and a half, I believe. And I think talking with many members of the steering committee, and if you even evidence this by the number of, like, I can think of the participants and how that has dropped significantly just from the larger community. I think those numbers were 80 to 100, something like that. And now I think we're around 40 or so. And I even know we had members of the steering committee drop off for various reasons. But I do think that a common thread from people that I talk with on the steering committee and with the community is a frustration with the steering committee process. And I do think that it's really, really important that after any large undertaking, as a steering committee has been, from time and resources from the city and from the community, that it's worth having like a pretty serious debrief / like autopsy, if you will, and thinking about how this process could be more, I think, respectful to the community and actually like more collaborative. And I don't actually indict anyone around this. It's like been an incredibly challenging process, but I do think that, and I'd also say like community engagement in every shape and form is really, really challenging. I haven't seen it done perfectly in any process like this, but I do think it'd be really, and I certainly would volunteer to think about ways for similar processes in the future, how to make this like more fully collaborative. That's comment. So other short comment is looking on these pages, really the transportation pieces, and as someone who's been trying to get a left-hand turn signal at Colorado and 35th for more than 3 years now, I think there needs to be more details around here. And I think that like if we're the amount and seeing the traffic reports and accident reports from the 40th in Colorado and 35th in Colorado intersections, like that there needs to be more thought around that. Like the amount of the amount of traffic and folks that will be coming through that space will be magnified by amounts that I can't even imagine. And I think the challenges will increase many, many times. And then my question is specifically around so should this get through city council? And if I understand it, in December, going to the ballot then in April, the language that it would be on the ballot, would it be very kind of like a Tabor language of like, shall the conservation easement be lifted for the area known as, or like for Park Hill Golf Course, like something very similar, something basic like that? Or is there like a more comprehensive thing? I understand that I might be asking the wrong person around that, but I do think that's like a really important thing, because that language around that I think will be very influential in how this will be perceived by the community.
Unfortunately, my legal knowledge ends with the Law and Order episode I watched last night, so I can't tell you exactly what that language will look like.
And I do understand like 301 is like a very new, as a result of 301, it's like a very new world for the city. I do think that would be something I'd be interested to learn more about, because I think that if like this process is happening, I think it's worth contemplating like how that will be presented to Denver voters.
Yep.
Rachel and then Patty.
Hi, everyone. I just want to echo what a couple of other people had brought up tonight, specifically around the traffic and mobility. I think this has come up time and time again, and we haven't necessarily heard great answers, but I'm curious if there are plans to get a detailed traffic study for this area with the Dahlia connection and development happening along Colorado Boulevard. I think that would be a really important part of this puzzle.
Walter, I see you there. I see you come on.
Yeah. So yeah, preliminary traffic study was completed that looked at both the current and future intersection functionality. But a more in-depth traffic impact study or something of that sort would be completed as part of any site development plan that happens here, and would be looking at any challenges related to congestion and that sort of thing. So this is the what's on the screen here was the preliminary traffic study, which was completed looking at both current and future intersection functionality with some assumptions around maximum amounts of development or different sorts of development. So it's sort of having to first figure out the density and amount of square footage and that sort of thing that would actually be within the site before doing that more in-depth analysis. But I would say, I think a lot of this also speaks to the importance of leveraging the transit opportunities in the area, whether it's 40th and Colorado Station and future bus rapid transit along Colorado Boulevard and the other multimodal improvements that would be made to this area that would just provide just other options. And I know there are concerns that others have mentioned on this call about it's not realistic for everyone to not drive, but we do want to provide as many options as possible to reduce congestion and provide different ways for folks to get around.
Patty?
Yeah, I think just echoing everybody that's been talking about the data connection. I think on that page 66, and I think it was like an H, the letter H, it just needs to be very clear to the community that it is going to be, if you guys are going to put a street there where transit is going to happen, I think people need to know before they vote on this. And I think the council needs to know that that's not what the community wants before they vote on this. So just, I think the more transparent you are in that, the better, because I think the way it's worded right now, it seems like it's just going to be, like, I don't know, like a bike line maybe, or it just doesn't, I think the more transparent you are with the community, the better.
Yeah, just to follow up, Patty, I agree. I think it's weird that this is going to city council without a detailed consideration of what this is going to do. So just.
Roger, just a comment, please. Come on down. Okay. Price is right.
All right. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, just for clarity purposes, we as a community will have an opportunity during the public hearing to go before council before they vote. And so anything I think that's left out, it would be our opportunity to speak to these points. If in fact they aren't laid out as clear as we think they'd like to be, because our names are on here. And I think there always is some opposition that they can hear. So just know that that's our opportunity to have our voices heard. It's not the end and say all be all. That's all I had.
Yes.
Yes. The question from Noah was, does the planning committee have public comment? And that answer is yes. Any other questions or thoughts from steering committees online? That's seeing none. You got. We got time, so you come on down.
Okay, I'm assuming nobody, Mohammed Khan from steering committee, nobody from the city's Department of Housing and Stability here today.
No, unfortunately, Brad had a conflict and he wasn't able to make the meeting tonight.
No worries.
Okay.
So I think before I dive into the minutia of this, like a bigger question for Kenneth and for CPD as well, is what happens if this goes on the ballot and the voters say no again? What happens after that?
Yeah, thanks, Mohammed. Kenneth Ho with Westside. The easement is really clear. The land needs to be an 18-hole regulation length golf course. And so that's what will be in place. So all of the affordable housing agreements, everything else, all those other community benefits agreement are all going to be dependent upon a successful result at the ballot. Otherwise, it becomes 18-hole regulation.
Privately owned.
Privately owned. Yeah.
Would you be operating a golf course as a site investment?
I think that there's probably, like before, how it's going to be operated will be, it could be a third party that operates it, just kind of like how it was with Cleaner.
So in conjunction to the easement, what effect does that have? Does the easement remain? Because I know there's some litigation going on as well. So what happens at that point?
So let's just repeat the comment. So folks from Roger,
Thank
so
you.
folks at home can hear that. Roger, you said, and I'm paraphrasing, what happens with the easement? Will it remain in place if it fails at the ballot box, correct?
Right.
Yeah, the easement as it exists will remain in place. If
Should
the
the
ballot,
ballot be voted down?
if the ballot, right, if it is unsuccessful at the ballot, then the easement as it exists, that mandating it to be an 18-hole regulation like golf course and driving range, that will remain in place.
So based on last Thursday night, when Penn was here for SOS, is this not being litigated in terms of the functionality of the easement?
Roger asked, is this being litigated in terms of the functionality of the easement?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Okay, maybe I'm confused. I'm gonna yield.
The litigation that Mr. Tate was involved in was dismissed by a district court judge, and it was because of a number of reasons, actually. So, go ahead.
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
Standing close. So are you saying there's no current litigation that, to your knowledge, that you were involved in with this site?
On the easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no current litigation regarding that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Okay, I am back. The small area plan and page 7 where the demographics and the circles are drawn around it. Just curious, in this small area plan, Northeast Park Hill has been mentioned multiple times as the primary location of the property. If you look at the half-mile radius around this, half of the Clayton is here. This is, Clayton ends at York, so this is half of Clayton. Significant portion of El Reswancia is here as well. So the Skyline here as well, because MLK, that's Skyline here. What's the reasoning behind just mentioning Northeast Park Hill and not the neighboring neighborhoods?
Because it is 100% within the statistical neighborhood boundaries.
100% agreed. That's a very valid definition and explanation there. Just want to make sure that when we are, mentioning other, when we are mentioning stuff around here, so it's like we are talking about the grocery store that is absent in this portion of Northeast Park Hill. We also mentioned Clayton because they do not have a grocery store in the entire Clayton.
A full service grocery
Yes,
store.
full service, sorry, thank you, full service grocery store.
Yeah.
So want to make sure that we are mentioning other neighborhoods that are also a food desert, and I guess Swansea would be another one there. And going back to the conversation about Ash/Albion and the Dahlia Street, I just want to make sure that there is language in the small area plan about safe crossing across Colorado Boulevard if we are going to do the Main Street connection. It has been taught in theory. It is there. If you read through it, I want it to be very clear, very much intentional in there that we want these crossings to be very pedestrian friendly and very multimodal friendly there. So,
Walter?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we talk a lot about some of the different safety measures that would go in place, but I think we can make it a little bit more explicit around improving safety. I know recommendation M1 does talk about alleviating congestion, improving safety, that sort of thing, but in terms of crossing Colorado Boulevard in general, maybe we can work to make that a bit more clear.
Yeah, I think we can look for ways between now and the planning board draft in order to beef up language in the plan around safety and the importance of safety along Colorado Boulevard. So thank you for that.
Shanta, you had your hand up, or maybe you didn't, but I seen it.
I did for a second. I just wanted to just kind of co-sign what Ali said about the encompassing the surrounding neighborhoods with the small area plan. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Because those neighborhoods will be significantly affected by what happens with this land. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Mohammed has 2 additional questions.
So again, page,
I'm sorry, Mohammed.
it's okay.
No, you're good.
I said your name wrong.
Fine. My phone says Muhammad Ali, so that's fine. So again, so there has been lots of conversations about Colorado Boulevard and being a rapid bus transport system. I didn't see any language around right of way and if the city would be requiring the property owner to yield more acreage along Colorado Boulevard for the future development that happens there. Because if we just decide to go build right on the property line, what happens 5 years down the road when they decide to put a bus transport system and they take away one of the lanes? People will be coming with pitchforks here. So I think that needs to be taken into account now versus 5 years down the road.
Walter, do you want to respond? I might have something to piggyback on.
And just to be clear, Mohammed, is that a question related to dedicating more right of way for Colorado Boulevard to related to the BRT? So I know the BRT is in preliminary discussions right now and in terms of planning, and the city is coordinating with CDOT on that. But as far as I know, it's my understanding not to add additional lanes. The BRT would use the existing right of way along Colorado Boulevard, and it's still yet to be determined if it would be center running, which means it would run on the left side in the middle, or if it would be side running on the right. That portion of design is still pretty early on and is still being studied at this point. But it's overall be using the existing right of way of Colorado Boulevard at this point, as far as I understand.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And the last question I have, and I know the answer to this, which year's income data will this, future, we talked about income restricted housing, we talked about that missing middle income. I love those ideas, by the way. It sounds like that I'm just complaining here. There are things in there that I like too. But I love those. Which year's income data would those 30 to 80 and 80 to 120% AMI would that be using?
So you're saying, for instance, like in the development agreement, when they're talking about affordable housing?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
It would change. And so it would not be 2022, what the income numbers we are putting in right now. 5 years down the road, the numbers are different. That will be taken into account. Inflation is crazy this year. Numbers come in later. Okay.
You go on Host's website, the housing stability. Yes. I know I'm not supposed to use acronyms. Thanks, Sarah. You can go on their website and you can see that annually when they update it, they put that table online so you can see what those income, what's 100% of the AMI each year. So it's all made publicly available.
Right. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments for steering committee's members here in the facility? All right. Virtually, any final questions or comments? Great. Lamone, did you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So what are the timelines we're looking at for city council? I understand that the developer has already got planning in the works. Is that correct?
We're going to put the schedule slide back up for you. 1 second.
Okay.
Do you see that, Lamone?
I see Q1, Q2, Q3, but what does that mean?
So if you look, do you see the arrow that says we are here? Key dates on the plan process. So planning board would be in October. And then city council, the city council would hear the plan in December.
Okay. And so the vote is going to be in April.
I don't know.
On the plan.
I think the clarification is it's not going on this November's ballot.
No.
Okay. All righty. And it looks like the plan is moving on with or without the CBA. Is that correct?
So the CBA is a separate part of this. So to answer your question, yes, this moves without the CBA. The CBA doesn't have anything to do with this process.
Okay.
Okay. It's, well, we're gonna.
Sarah has something to chime in.
Sarah's gonna get that right for us.
You are 100% correct that there's no legal reason why the plan is attached to the CBA. But it is our hope and intent, because the community and city council will care a lot about what's in the CBA, that it'll be ready by December at the time that this is going to city council. So it's not required, and it's not in our control because it's not our process, but we are aware of the CBA and hopeful that the schedules will line up.
Okay. Thank you.
Patty, is your hand up?
Yes, I kind of wanted to know if you guys are gonna send an email of like details of the city council meeting and had to be able to attend to all of us, since we all have our name there and are vested. I'm sure if we're able to, we would like to go and know how to attend, I guess.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that between either myself sending an email to this group or Dr. Ross sending an email to this group for planning board and city council. That's something we can definitely do.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Noah?
You didn't know this was a fitness plan.
So my understanding, so planning committee in October, city council in December, is there a 60-day requirement that, like, is it the reason that it will go in front of there in December, is my understanding, by the end of the year is the deadline to get on the ballot for April. And so if, like, is there a legal requirement that says you have 60 days to get in front of city council after it passes through planning committee? Like, just what is the, why are we seeing December from the October planning committee? My question.
Yeah. Sarah's gonna come answer this.
Okay, so great question. First, I just want to clarify, we don't know for sure it'll be at city council in December, right? That is currently the plan, but a lot depends on how the process goes, starting with planning board. I'm not aware of certainly for the plan that you all are working on, there's not like a legal requirement or timeline for like 60 days or something like that between planning board and city council. You did mention something about the ballot piece. My understanding is that I think it's actually sometime in January would be the last possible time that city council can vote on language to refer to the ballot for April. So it'll be their decision on whether to refer it in April or not. And I do believe, like I said, I do believe they technically have through till January to make that decision.
I think the whole point is, like, with the plan, we want to give them something that they know what they're voting on, you know, that's.
Oh, no, sorry, I was just curious, like, the 2-month thing, is that like where that's coming from?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the steering committee members. It's a lot of information that you guys have to read through and process. I think really great questions, and I think there's even more processing that's still happening, and maybe even a few more questions. So if you have those, please don't hesitate to shoot an email. You can email those questions to myself or Courtney. We'll make sure that those questions get routed to the appropriate people. You will also get information about the planning board and any other subsequent meetings related to this. We'll make sure that we share that information with all of you. So at this time, we're going to shift, and just want to give you just a quick update on the CBA.
That's not the way.
1 second there. So you may have not had an opportunity to check email yet, but Mary, the representative from the CBA, reached out, and essentially she let us know that the CBA working group is still in the process of finalizing the acts that they'll be making of West Side Investment Partners. And so they're not at a place where they're ready to provide an update because they're still working through some things. All of the CBA working groups requests are grounded in the community values that emerge from the Community Voice Report. And they're centered on the things that they're focused on are affordable housing, housing for diverse community inclusive of race, ethnicity, age, and household size, retail opportunities that promote small business, small and minority businesses, healthy food options, inclusive public spaces, and year-round recreational facilities for children. And so that is the information we have at the moment. And please check your email from Mary. It really just honestly refers to what I just reviewed, but you can follow up with her directly if you have any questions and continue to kind of follow along with their process. And my commitment to you is if I get information that's new or pertinent, we'll be sure that we send it to you as soon as we get it, as best as we can. All right. And so now we have 10 members from the community who have signed up for public comment. And as you know, public comment is 2 minutes for each participant. And so we are going to shift over and bring up our first speaker. Our first speaker this evening is Harry Dobby. And so once Harry gets on, we will provide 2 minutes and we'll hear from Harry.
There we go. Finally got the unmute. Sorry about that.
There you go, Harry. Thank you for being here, Harry. You have 2 minutes, sir.
All right, thanks. It's Harry Dobie, by the way. There was a movie recently on TV about a comet that was spotted coming right at Earth. It was called Don't Look Up. Despite the looming disaster, government leaders chose to ignore the facts and let the people of Earth believe there was no danger, as long as they didn't listen to the scientists. Well, it seems all of us that have been following the city's Park Hill Golf Course development planning process are in a movie that's called Don't Look Across the Street. For the past 2 years, the city has been telling us to ignore the fact that the Park Hill Golf Course land doesn't have any development rights, or that sacrificing urban green space in the middle of an environmental crisis is just business as usual. As long as we don't look across the street, the $2 million we paid for the perpetual conservation easement is nothing to be concerned about. It's now worth at least $60 million. They hope as long as we don't look across the street, we'll ignore the fact that there are 2 major income restricted developments happening down the street, adding hundreds of new apartments and townhomes, and at least 34 properties surrounding the 40th and Colorado train station in the hands of developers that don't require destroying precious green space. 2 years ago, the city forced this committee to put on blinders and only consider development possibilities on this single property. Apparently because Westside somehow deserves very special treatment. Just ask all the other developers waiting months to have their plans approved by a backlogged planning department. They're afraid that you will look across the street and realize that losing Park Hill Golf Course green space is a really awful idea, because just across the street, you will see where hundreds and in the future, thousands of new mixed-use residential, retail, and commercial development, which will be within walking distance.
Harry, you used your time. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, thank you.
Our next speaker this evening is Woody Garnsey. Woody.
Can I open now?
Yes, you can. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, just a minute. I've got to get the video here.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. There you go. Now you have 2 minutes.
Hey, first, CPD is getting ready prematurely to finalize a small area plan to submit to the planning board October 19th. and then to city council. This is very troubling for many reasons, including the following 7 real quickly. Number 1, the entire process is premature because the easement cannot be terminated, released, extinguished, or abandoned without a court order under the Colorado state statute. Number 2, there's been no meaningful discussion of the conservation easement itself. Number 3, the planning process is myopically only focused on the 155 acres of the Park Hill Golf Course land. Number 4, there's been no meaningful discussion of the traffic impacts of this dense development. Number 5, there's been no meaningful discussion of the health and environmental benefits of preserving the entire 155 acres. Next, number 6, the CPD survey was an invalid push survey designed to support pro-development outcomes. Number 7, CPD has completely ignored its own environmental and parks and open space study prepared in April 2021, which said we need at least 183 more acres of park and open space in the Clayton, Swansea, and Northeast Park Hill neighborhoods. Next, I want to briefly mention Westside's September 7 community information meeting. Based on my interactions and the reported interactions of others with people who attended, a vast majority of the over 300 people supported preserving the conservation easement and having the city eventually purchase the land for a fabulous park. Next, contrary to what Mr. Ho has said repeatedly, if the conservation easement remains, it does not need to be a golf course forever. Westside and the city can modify the agreement as long as the modifications are consistent with the open space and recreational conservation purposes of the easement. Finally, it's critical that everyone understands that if the city were to take action to terminate the conservation easement, it would result in a gift from Denver taxpayers to West.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next speaker this evening is Helen Bradshaw.
I do not see Helen Bradshaw. Can you go to the next person?
Yep, so looks like we don't have Helen this evening. Our next speaker is Dane Washington.
I don't see Dane either in the list. I saw him earlier. Now he's gone.
Okay, it looks like Dane has left the meeting, so we'll move to our next speaker, Catherine Pacala.
Kate.
Kate Pacala.
Let's see here. Panelist. All right. Kate, you're promoted.
Oh, okay. Hello. Hi, can you hear me now? And
Kate, you have 2 minutes.
okay, thank you. I want to say that I admire the committee members because they've put a lot of time and thought and trust into this process. And I think listening in tonight, I think they're beginning to have a bit of realization that perhaps all of their thoughts and hopes and ideas are probably not going to come into place unless that's what the developer wants. The developer has no legal obligation to almost anybody unless they can get through with the city. And this developer doesn't have that much credibility. The fact that Mr. Ho keeps saying it has to be an 18-hole golf course when that's not the case is just shows their intent. I think if you look at what's happened around Loretto Heights, which they're developing, you'll see that there's a lot of disappointment in how things have gone there. And I just think the good news is that if this does not get past city council and the courts and the voters, that it's going to be quite easy to just changed, just clarify the terms of the easement so that it can be open space with unrelated recreation uses, which is part of the easement. It says that unrelated recreation uses are permitted. And I would like to see it called the Dorothy King Open Space, because Dorothy King worked for Denver Parks and Rec and was a remarkable person. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, our next speaker this evening is Sharif Ali.
Do not see Sharif.
Okay. Moving on to our next speaker, Robert Greer.
I do see that.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Robert, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, I just want to mention a couple things. Thought it was interesting that Harry W. brought up the movie Don't Look Up. Clearly that movie is about climate change. I hope we all can agree. But I would also encourage Mr. Dobie to read the chapter of the IPCC report, I believe it's from 2015, entitled Human Settlements and Spatial Planning. It's very clear, researchers are in total agreement that urban infill development is good for the climate, period. Period. There are better and worse ways to do it, but the current suburban lifestyle that Mr. Dobie and apparently other people on this call live in and want to preserve until the end of time is inherently unsustainable. It requires enormous use of energy, most in the form of cars to get around, and the building form is also highly inefficient. So if you want to talk about the environment, read the science. No more BS on that. We're going to hold you to a higher standard. Okay. Another thing, if your main concern about this project is parking, don't call yourself an environmentalist. Period. End of story. Okay. Another thing, a couple hundred units around 40th in Colorado, that's not nearly enough to address the need that we have right now. I'm an eviction defense attorney and a housing activist. We need about 100,000 new units of housing in Denver to meet the need and restore the market to some semblance of balance. And this project will include a disproportionate number of affordable housing, which research from progressive economists shows very clearly that we need more than market rate housing. There's an incredible opportunity to build a lot of affordable units. Squandering that, I mean, imagine yourself in the shoes of somebody who is trying to find housing right now. That's probably a bit harder for some of the people on this call who haven't had to buy a house anytime in the last 40 years, but that's the reality that many people face. Another thing about legal credibility, Woody Garnsey, Harry Dobie, that whole group of people, they had their shot before.
Thank you, Robert. You hit your time.
I'm gonna let the Samsung.
Our next speaker is Jason McBride.
I see someone in the attendee list under Samsung SM-A, and I'm wondering if that is Jason.
It is Sharif Ali.
Oh, it's Sharif. Okay.
Sharif, sir, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, basically, what I wanted to say is that I live in the Park Hill community in North Park Hill. And, you know, North Park Hill is one of the most underdeveloped neighborhoods in Denver economically. And, you know, there's a great need for affordable housing, a grocery store that people can get to. And so that's why, you know, I'm in support of, you know, the development over on that land. Can you still hear me?
Yep, continue, please.
That's why I'm in support of limited development on that land. You know, because I actually right now I'm at a prayer vigil for two individuals that got shot over by East High School. And I left that vigil to come participate in this Zoom meeting, man, because we have kids in our neighborhood that don't have jobs, have limited education, and they need something to do. And I really do feel that development over in that neighborhood, especially getting business over there or a grocery store over there, would help with that. It would help with that for kids to have a safe space over there to work and play football, baseball, basketball. And, I think that it's enough land for it still to be, we can still have the open space with the park. But, I'm really for some sort of limited development, especially with the housing crisis that we're facing here in Denver and, the economic deprivation that I see every day over in North Park Hill. I'll yield my time later.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Use your time. Our next speaker is Muriel Williams Thompson. Good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, steering committee. My name is Muriel Williams Thompson. I'm the president of the Denver chapter of National Association of Real Estate Brokers. I did want to start by saying that we actually believe in democracy and housing. And we're also pushing to make sure that we can make more homeowners in this processing. In this whole process. Housing is an issue. I do want to thank, I don't know Robert Greer, but I do want to thank him for saying we do need 100,000 units to actually deal with the housing issue that we have. There's going to be thousands of more people that's going to end up being homeless. Throughout the 2 years that we've been talking about this easement, as for those who actually talked about, we haven't talked about these, we've talked about the easement for 2 years. That's enough time. In the 2 years, the median sales price of houses have gone up to over 700,000 in Denver. This is not becoming affordable as we keep going back and forth talking about things. We need to be able to make action and to put something into place now. The small area plan actually addresses a small portion of the housing issue that we have in our metro area. It's been talked about, it's been extensively, it's gone back and forth. I'm from Park Hill. I have a very big passion for this area. I have people who want to move back into this area from real estate standpoint, and they have aging parents that they cannot move next to. This is an issue. We want to have these good neighbors be able to move back into the neighborhood that they grew up in and they have families in. Being able to start this development makes sense. 100 acres is plenty enough space. And unfortunately, I wish there was going to be more that was going to be developed than 55 acres, but if that's what the plan is, it more than meets the needs that the community has identified throughout this almost 2 years process. I would like to see that the steering committee approve these plans to move forward and we not waste any more time to keep going back and forth and talking about an easement that's been discussed for 2 years.
Thank you. All right. Our final speaker for the evening, last but not least, is Jeff Harborough.
Hello, this is Jeff Harbaugh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you, Jeff. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I'm here today to speak out against development on land that has a perpetual conservation easement. It should remain protected as open space. More than 68% of the neighborhoods surrounding the land voted for protecting the conservation easement. Yet we are here discussing land that has an easement. People have voted repeatedly to protect this land and over different timeframes and mayoral administrations. I have so many questions, all of which cannot be answered by this process. For example, why are we giving away our rights as taxpayers to a private developer who got this land at an incredible discount? It must be connected to sizable campaign contributions by West Side's partners to the mayor's runoff campaign in 2019. Why would we ever dispense with the easement when Denver is facing a shrinking amount of parkland and an increase in population? Access to parkland as opposed to a flood detention area, as proposing by this visioning process, is linked to people's health and well-being. This is considerable research around the issue, and it is captured in Denver's game plan. Is the city saying that people of North Park Hill and surrounding neighborhoods of Northeast Denver, which are incredibly park poor, are not eligible for such amenities? This visioning process will be in effect privatize our parkland to be held by a developer. None of these questions have been addressed through this process. To continue to push a plan that is not equitable, is not legal, and is not providing any commitment to affordable housing is foolish and costly. Why should we ever believe that the city or developer would uphold a deed restriction for affordable housing when simultaneously
Thank you,
doing
Jeff.
away with the
Appreciate
need
your time, sir.
restriction?
That concludes our public comment. Just want to say thank you to all of the community members who participated this evening with their comments, talking to the steering committee. We appreciate your time, your comment. Thank you for being with us this evening. At this time, we are going to conclude our evening. Just a couple final updates before we do that. As always, the recording will be available online on CPD's YouTube channel with the link on the project page. You'll receive an email from me asking if you guys want to meet October 11th. If we do that, that'll be a meeting determined by you. You would submit the agenda items that you would want to talk about. And we would use that information to build the agenda if you feel like that meeting is necessary. So we will send out an email. So it's going to be really important that you respond to that. I'll be looking for critical mass for that, a quorum, if you will, to see if we're going to do that. And then the planning board meeting hearing on the draft plan is October 19th, and we'll definitely send you information about the where and when of that meeting as well. With that being said, as always, thank you all so much. Thank you to everybody online. Thank you to our elected officials who are with us. Thank you to our community members who are listening in, and to all the steering committees, both in person and virtual. You could be doing anything else on a Tuesday evening. You are here participating in the public process. And so just kudos to you and thank you so much for all you do. Everybody have a great evening.